prejudge Mr. Ryan's proposal, except to say that the President looks forward to engaging in a serious conversation where people calmly address the issues at hand and try to come together in a way that can produce a result that the American people can broadly support, because nothing like this gets done if it's not done in a bipartisan way.
Okay, welcome back to Morning Joe. 23 past the hour, live look at the White House this morning. And joining us now from the White House, NBC News White House correspondent and co-host of MSNBC's The Daily Rundown, Savannah Guthrie. Savannah, good morning.
Good morning.
Is the president ready to talk about the budget and maybe offer some counterpoints to Paul Ryan's points?
Well, you know, the president is having the leadership from Senate Majority Leader Reid and Speaker Boehner over, but I don't think they'll be talking about Ryan's proposal, which is next year. This is triage time at the White House. They're going to be talking about this year's budget, this looming government shutdown, with some people will tell you if they don't find some common ground, if they don't find a deal by tonight, given House rules, which require 3-day posting of these bills, you're getting right up against a government shutdown. You know, if they were able to reach an accommodation, they could probably pass some short-term measure and get it done. But this threat of a government shutdown is pretty real. I mean, the White House, in an abundance of caution, is instructing agencies to prepare their contingency plans for a shutdown. Speaker Boehner is doing something similar on Capitol Hill. And I'm told by top aides that the president's message to the leadership this morning is get it done. This is not one of the hardest issues facing us. We have an agreement, according to the Democrats in the White House, at a top-line number of $33 billion in spending cuts. The issue is the composition of these cuts, and the White House feels it's time to put aside the politics and get this budget passed. So the president's going to try to lean hard on the speaker and the majority leader to say, stop with the posturing, stop with the rhetoric, get this budget passed.
The president is, and seems to be, Savannah, in a great position where he can allow the House to put out their proposals, the Democratic Senate to put out their proposals, then they can scrap and fight, and then he can come in at the end and go, boys, let's just sit down and get. I mean, whether you're talking about this triage situation or the ultimate budget or entitlements, the president can just sit back and allow Democrats in the Senate to call Republicans mean-spirited and then step in at the end, right?
You pick up on a great point. And look, aides here, particularly the ones thinking about re-election, and they are no matter what they tell you, if they can position the president as the most reasonable man in Washington, they will be happy every time he looks like the guy coming in at the last minute, putting together a deal, coming to the middle, making some concessions of his own, drawing Republicans to the bargaining table. That's why they feel the lame duck session ultimately gave them such a bounce, because they think it made up some ground they had lost, frankly, with independence. So, yes, I think as much as the president is appearing to be the person who wants to get a deal, who wants to make Washington work, who is rising above the partisan politics on either side, that's a day that aides here at the White House are happy.
John, it's classic Bill Clinton, isn't it? It is classic where you play your Democrats on the Hill against Republicans against the Hill, and you triangulation. You look like the only grown-up in town.
Well, yeah, and look, I mean, this is a situation where, look, in fact, this is going to be, however this works out, it's going to be a victory for Republicans on substance, right? Because the leadership proposal for this 2011 was to cut $32 billion. The Democrats are already to $33 billion, which means they're giving Republicans more than they asked for at the start. Now the goalposts have moved to 61, and as you pointed out before, John Boehner is a very weak speaker in some respects, right? Because there's this whole revolution in his caucus that he's not the leader of. He happened to be in office when this revolution started.
And now over 80 freshmen. It's just an astounding.
And they are not his people. And in fact, you saw last week Eric Cantor start to put some distance between himself and John Boehner, and Cantor kind of trying to put pressure on Boehner. So the White House, that's all great for the White House, because their attitude is, if the government shuts down now, nobody's going to blame Barack Obama. They're going to blame this conflict between Boehner and his own caucus.
Mr. Mayor, you and I both think the president should lead, but just looking at it politically,
it's a very smart strategy.
It's a brilliant position he's in, right?
And it's a classic thing to do when you have a Democratic Senate, a Republican House. It's a perfect thing for a chief executive to do. Play them off against each other try to put them on the extremes, and then you seem to be the guy.
But hold on, do you consider that leadership? You talk about leadership all the time. You just said that's the perfect way to be a CEO.
Terrible. I think it's good politics, but terrible government, terrible leadership. I think a president who was a natural leader would find it impossible to put himself in that position. He'd want to impose his thinking, his ideas on the debate. The president is a follower. He's an academic and a follower in almost everything. Even his health care achievement, which I think is a disaster, Obamacare, he followed the Congress into that achievement.
It is.
He didn't get really what he wanted.
John, it is remarkable. And we've had Democrats noting this, so save your hate emails for the mayor, because Democrats have come on, John, and said this. It is astounding. I don't think I've ever seen a president sit back and allow events to shape his administration. If you talk about health care, we didn't know whether he was for the public option for a year and a half.
Well, yet he passed the bill. So,
I understand, but I'm just making the point.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I think they looked at some mistakes that the Clinton administration made in their view strategically on things like trying to pass health care. They did the opposite, and in the end, they looked at that and they thought, this is a very hard thing to do. We got it done. But right now, I just want to go back to the mayor. You said that on this particular budget fight that Obama's following, would you have said that the same thing of Bill Clinton when he successfully did the same thing back in 1994?
Sure, absolutely. I think the president should put out his vision. We are entitled to that from the president. His vision of what our budget should look like, not even so much in this budget fight for this year, but for the future, in a response to what Ryan did. This thing has to be compromised. You can't shut government down. And I think it would hurt Republicans if government shut down. But I'm not sure. This is 10 years later. It also might hurt Obama. Yeah. It may look like a totally ineffective president who can't keep the government going.
Yeah.
And Joe?
This could hurt everybody.
Yep, Savannah?
I was just going to say, Mayor Giuliani makes the point that I think both sides don't know who a government shutdown would hurt. So it's this feeling of mutually assured destruction that might ultimately end up with a deal here this week.
Yeah. Well, also, if you're supposed to lead, you don't necessarily have to have followers, but at least not people intent on destroying you, which is the other part of the equation. Savannah Guthrie, thank you very much.
Well, I don't even know what that means.
I do.
Well, thank you, John.
It was a very wise point.
Was it a wise point?
Rudy Giuliani, thank you.
Thank you
very much. Up next, the $6 trillion man, Congressman Paul Ryan, will be with us to break down his budget proposal. We'll be right back.